leader of the 3rd Squad of the Shinsengumi.
Shizo Hijikata, assistant leader of the Shinsengumi. Okita, I recommend that you stand down. That man over there, the infamous Batosai, the mask. People's wolves are here. It's the Shinsengumi.
What is up, guys? DT Ninja here for you guys my Ruroken Hokkaido arc discussion. A strange fate. Okay, guys, today we are going to look at the fated encounter between Itakura Byakuya and Koshijiro Kamiya. That is in chapter 58. There are some important things in this chapter that have implications for the future, so I wanted to discuss them further, and it's a great way to show, the core theme of the Hokkaido arc. So yeah, anyways, we're going to be taking a look at a lot of things in the chapter. We're also going to be looking back at the battle between Kenshin Sojiro versus Itakura, because that battle actually triggers the memory in which Itakura remembers the snowy blizzard in which he encounters Koshijiro. Also, we're going to take a look at the first chapter because there is something about Koshijiro in here that is very key to Hokkaido and his character, the whole theme and how and why he created the Kamiya Kashin Ryu. So let's get to it. All right, so a strange fate. These are words that Itakura Byakuya says to Koshijiro when he realizes that Koshijiro is a swordsman who is not having luck in his training. So he relates to him in that aspect. But also, this is kind of a theme of Hokkaido, a strange fate. Think about it. You have a lot of pairings that have reunions or even encounters again. And each of these are shown in Hokkaido. For example, you have the fated encounter between Eiji Mishima and Sojiro Seita.
In the end, only the fittest survive in this world. If you're strong, you live. If you're weak, you die.
Where Eiji nearly blows Sojiro Seita's head off after he sees his face and literally pulls out the rifle. So you have this kind of encounter there. You could say a strange fate for them. You could say a strange fate for Sano and Anji, because it's a continuation of their bond that they now have. And so they fight alongside each other in Hokkaido. So very interesting, but also strange fate, right? Another one, we have Judo Abe meeting the Shinsengumi, Saido Hajime, and Nagakure Shinpachi again. He absolutely hates the Shinsengumi, but he fights alongside them reluctantly, but realizes that actually he is responsible to survive and live on in the new era, because that is what his comrade sacrificed for him. He is supposed to live on in the new era. Nagakura shows him that. He makes him realize that. So we have this responsibility being the key theme for Sapporo Shinsengumi Elegy. And then, of course, in Otaru, another mission, we have Kenshin meeting Kanryu Takeda. And of course, we have memories kind of stirred up, and Kanryu is one of the most hated characters because he killed the Oniwaban group in cold blood, right, with the Gatling gun. But now we learn about his past. We learn that he was poor growing up, and Kenshin understands his story. It's not about forgiveness. It's about comprehension, understanding where someone comes from. And Kenshin was poor too, so he understands what it's like to be poor in Kanryu's shoes. Now, Kanryu doesn't like that Kenshin understands him, but it is kind of the theme of that part of the series of Otaru. So very interesting stuff. So in chapter 58, this strange fate is actually identity, because the identity of Byakuya is questioned, right? He sees himself reflected in the snow, in the blizzard. So this identity is kind of a very key theme, and we're going to talk about that today. So let's get to the discussion. All right, so number one, why does confronting Himura Batosai force Itakura's suppressed identity to resurface? Okay, so this is basically Itakura has fought many strong opponents before in the past, but basically, why is it Kenshin is the one to trigger those memories suddenly? So when Itakura confronts Kenshin, he realizes that Kenshin represents the future he is trying to avoid. Kenshin once erased his former self through killing, becoming Hitokiri Batosai, and achieving fearlessness by letting go of his humanity. Although Kenshin later found himself again, that fearlessness was born from self-erasure. Okay, so basically Kenshin erased his former self, became a complete killer as Hitokiri Batosai, but in this case, by contrast, Itakura is still suppressing his former self through discipline and suffering. He believes he can become fearless without losing himself, yet the confrontation forces him to see that he is attempting to walk the same path in a different form. So that's a very interesting way to look at it. Confronting this reality destabilizes Itakura's belief, causing his suppressed identity, along with his memories, to resurface as resistance. It's a trauma response. When Kenshin, and this is why, when Kenshin collapses and Kanzato urges him to abandon Batosai's legend, the illusion of invincibility breaks, allowing Itakura's humanity to fully return, which is why he sheds tears when he learns that Himura Batosai's legend is over. So, because Batosai, or Himura Batosai, is revealed as a human fragile body that collapse destroys the illusion that self-erasure leads to invincibility. So basically, Kenshin's fragile body and the fact that he collapsed, it destroys the illusion that he is invincible. So yeah, that is why he resurfaces his humanity. So anyway, a very interesting kind of thing. So yeah, Itakura is trying to go beyond human means. But remember, Master Hiko warned Kenshin in the Kyoto arc, never try to be something else. And Itakura is on the threshold of trying to become a completely different thing from a human being. So it's kind of the warning, he's dangerously close. But that humanity is still there. He's suppressing that humanity. So it's a very interesting kind of way to look at Itakura's character. Okay, number 2. Why does their meeting happen in Ichigo? And what does the place mean to Koshijiro, but not to Itakura? So obviously Ichigo is the place in chapter 58 is the location of the flashback, Ichigo. You've probably heard this before, but Ichigo was used in the one-shot for Yaiko Sakabato. We're going to briefly talk about that here in a moment, but their meeting happens in Ichigo because it is a neutral space, much like Kenshin in the bamboo forest, where he visits to calm his spirit. Although it exists within the Bakamatsu, it is removed from the chaos. And of course, the real chaos takes place in Kyoto. For Koshijiro, Ichigo represents home and peace, a place connected to ordinary life rather than violence. This is echoed later when Kaoru mentions Ichigo as a place of guidance and growth for Yahiko, reinforcing it as a space where swords are meant to protect, not destroy. For Itakura, Ichigo holds no meaning. It is simply terrain. So it is a neutral space from chaos. So it's a very interesting kind of setting in a way, and it kind of reverts back to how, Himura Batosai, Kenshin would always go to the bamboo forest before a fight. So, number 3, what clues suggest they may have come from the same background, and where do their mindsets clearly split? Okay, so I'm talking about Koshijiro and Itakura being from the Kenkaku Heki. That's where their background comes from. Hokkaido. Okay, several clues suggest that Itakura and Koshijiro come from the same background. Both are swordsmen shaped by hardship rather than formal success, and both reference hell as a measure of strength, implying shared experiences of extreme suffering. Koshijiro being hunted by the Kenkaku Heki and the organizations being dissatisfied with Itakura's selfish behavior further suggest a shared origin tied to the same system. Koshijiro tells Itakura of a new sword that he's trying to create to help save others, Kamiya Kashin. And this is to show that violence isn't the only way to survive. Their mindsets clearly split on how they act on that background in Ichigo. When confronting the bandits, both intend to stop them, but Itakura resolves the situation through total annihilation. I mean, he cuts them in half, right? While Koshijiro seeks to stop violence without unnecessary killing. The difference shows that although they were forged in the same hell, they chose fundamentally different ways to survive it. So, these clues suggest both of them were born in Hokkaido from the Kenkaku Heki. They had to survive, but both chose different paths and how to survive. So it seems like Itakura was more brainwashed and he chose to suppress his former self rather than completely destroy it, because that is why he has these kind of acting on his own when, Kenzato is pissed off at him. You can't act like a soldier. You are a weapon. But Koshijiro is the opposite. He found a way to protect others. This sword that protects, Kamiya Kashin. So that is what I'm suggesting. And the reason is because chapter 1 has Koshijiro, right? We have the photograph, but we find out the photograph was in an envelope that says Kenkaku, which we now know is the Kenkaku Heki, and we saw the meeting between the Yaminobu and Doi, so we have that connection there. So we also find out that Honda was in charge of finding the man who escaped the main base of the Kenkaku Heki, so there's also that. Someone went into the base. And so in order to know the location, you have to be part of Kinkaku Heki. So anyway, those are the reasons why I think they are both from the same background. That would be an interesting thing. And it also makes sense why Kamiya Kashin became what it did. So, okay, number 4. Which do you think is harder to live with? Killing without hesitation or choosing to protect others? This is an interesting one. So, choosing to protect others, I believe, especially if you're a swordsman, is harder to live with. A skilled swordsman understands that protecting life still requires confronting suffering and the possibility of killing. Characters like Kenshin, who bears the Sakabato, and Koshijiro, who follow Kamiya Kashin, carry the weight of past violence, even as they refuse to embrace killing as purpose. The burden of awareness, knowing what must be done and choosing restraint is what defines their strength and why figures like Kenshin and Nagakura endure rather than harden. This is why Kenshin does what he does. It is very difficult. It is like a handicap. Remember Kenshin seeing his Hitokiri self every time he wields the Sakabato? This is a reason why Yaiko gave back the Sakabato. It's not because we don't want Yaiko in the story. And by the way, Yaiko is coming to Hokkaido. But that is why he gave it back to him, because he doesn't understand what it means to kill someone. He doesn't understand that suffering that Kenshin and Koshijiro have endured. And that is why they do what they do. So that's my take on it. But what do you guys think? On to number 5. You've come all the way back from hell. What does it mean? Okay, so Koshijiro says this to Itakura in the chapter after he wakes up. Itakura wakes up and he's thankful that he's still alive, and he says, you've come all the way back from hell. You should be careful and, heal those wounds before you go, right? And Itakura says, no, I haven't been. So he's suggesting he hasn't been to hell. So this is an interesting thing. Hell itself is symbolic. It's not literal, right? When the story refers coming back from hell, it represents surviving an environment that strips people of their humanity, such as the Kinkaku Heki. For Koshijiro, coming back from hell means enduring that suffering while still trying to live as a human being and choosing to protect others. However, for Itakura, hell is not something to escape. It is something he accepts and internalizes. So think about this. This means Itakura is living in hell. He is wanting to reach that place of hell, which is symbolic, by the way. It's that suffering. However, he's already in it, and he doesn't understand because he doesn't want to let go of the trauma, because trauma to him is strength. So that is what separates the two of them. So, like I said, rather returning from hell, Itakura continues to operate within it, using its logic to define strength and purpose. So this is acceptance versus escape. And think about it. Remember the man who escaped the base. That is Koshijiro. And accepting hell as a reality is what Itakura is doing. He's accepting that he cannot do that, right? He cannot reach hell. He's accepted it. He just keeps on doing it over and over, just wanting to reach that place. It's like trying to reach the moon, but never being able to touch it, right? It's just continuous over and over. So yeah, it is something he accepts. He accepts he's no one, a reflection of that snow self, in the blizzard. What the Kinkaku Heki has taken from him is stripped his humanity. However, instead of stripping it completely, he suppresses it and stays suffering. That is his strength. So that's a better way to describe the situation. So on to number 6. What do you think Itakura means when he says he will repay the favor for saving his life? So he says this to Koshijiro when Koshijiro saves him from being frozen in ice. He sets him in that, he puts him in bed in that shack and there's a big fire going. So after he wakes up, he says, I will repay the favor. So what does this mean? Itakura doesn't think in terms of gratitude or bonds. So it's not emotional. He thinks in terms of debts, balances, and resolution. So when he will repay Koshijiro for saving his life, he isn't promising kindness. He's acknowledging that something is now uneven. Being saved creates imbalance. So imbalance demands correction. For Itakura, this could mean removing a future threat. Okay? Also, it's possible that he has already repaid him. It's also possible that he repaid it. He refrains from killing Koshijiro. That could be a possibility. He doesn't hold any ill will towards him. He doesn't try to attack him or anything. So yeah, and he's got this memory of him. So obviously, it is something to think about. He also could intervene against a threat from the Kinkaku Heki because we have that, kind of dynamic between the head commander and Itakura. There is that tension between them. He doesn't fully agree with Kinkaku Heki stripping of humanity, the way that he can't do things on his own. It kind of goes against what Kinkaku Heki stand for. So there is that possibility that Itakura could help out Koshijiro in the future against Kinkaku Heki, or maybe even Kenshin. So yeah. Or he could eliminate someone who would eventually endanger Koshijiro. There is also a possibility that he is the one that gave the location of the main base to Koshijiro, because Koshijiro somehow infiltrates the headquarters of Kinkaku Heki. And remember, only commanders know the location. So that is also possibility there as well. But I do think it is possible that it is just maybe helping out and killing someone for him. So yeah. Okay, so the last question. How does the meaning of Koshijiro's real name reflect the suffering he endured, and why does that meaning help explain the philosophy behind the Kamiya Kashin style? Okay, so if you guys look back at chapter 1, we're going to look back at that right now. We can see Kaoru praying to her father in a shrine. We see an ihai in that shrine, and it says his name, his real name, his formal name. And it says Kenkaku Koshimichi Koji. So Koshijiro's real name is Koshimichi Koji. So Koshijiro's real name is Koshimichi Koji. So if you translate that, the kanji, and find the meaning behind it, it carries a meaning tied to endurance, persistence, and the act of continuing forward. Rather than signifying conquest or domination, the name reflects a life shaped by hardship and survival. This suggests that his identity was forged not through victory, but through suffering, and had to be endured rather than inflicted. That meaning helps explain the foundation of the Kamiya Kashin style. The style rejects killing not because violence is easy to avoid, but because its founder understood its cost. Having lived through a world defined by kill or be killed, Koshimichi's philosophy emerges as a response to that suffering. A sword exists not to erase others, but to preserve life and restore people. In this sense, Kamiya Kashin Ryu is not idealistic, it is corrective. Koshimichi did not arrive at a life-preserving doctrine from innocence, but from experience. His name reflects the burden he carried, and the style he created represents his attempt to ensure that suffering would not need to be repeated. Just as Kenshin could only understand the Sakabato after becoming a killer, Kaoru's father could only imagine a sword that revitalizes people after surviving a world where swords exist to erase the self. Protection is not innocence, it is discipline born from experience. And that is why I believe that Itakura and Koshijiro, their encounter is key in Hokkaido, because we learn that that person who saved Itakura's life is in fact the founder of the Kamiya Kashin Ryu. It is Koshijiro Koshimichi Koji. It is the person that had to endure hardships and suffering in order to create the style. It is why I believe Itakura and Koshijiro are connected through their past and their upbringing as part of the Kinkaku Heki system. Now, I'm talking about as children, they had to endure it. So, they go out in the world, in the wild, and they have to survive on their own. That's how the Kinkaku Heki system works. So many of them do not return to the base ever. Remember, Ono said that. So yeah, that's my feeling. I hope you guys enjoyed my discussion. I hope you guys learned something new. We got some very interesting stuff coming as the author has explained. Individual arcs will intensify from here on out. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one.